decisions impact, how do its decisions impact?
It makes all the important decisions that determine the future of Europe.
And
every single one.
How are those decisions transmitted to the official decision-making bodies, to the Brussels bureaucracy?
Oh, yes, what happens is, there is the Eurogroup meeting, and then afterwards there is an ECOFIN meeting. The ECOFIN does exist. It's the meeting of all the European Union finance ministers, including the ones that are not using the euro. So George Osborne from Britain is there, the Danish finance minister is there. And what happens, it's a rubber stamping process. So whatever the Eurogroup has decided, ECOFIN says, okay, we agree. And there's never any debate.
No debate.
Yeah.
No debate.
But let me tell you, this is quite interesting. How I came to understand that this is a paralegal group. At some point, the Troika inside the Eurogroup, because now it's not just the finance ministers, the IMF, Lagarde is sitting there, Thompson is sitting there, the European Central Bank is sitting there, the Commission is sitting there, they set the scene, and then the vermin, us, the finance ministers, simply nod.
And the
happily.
The IMF has no reaction to the Eurogroup decisions?
Well, it's in the Eurogroup. The IMF is part of the Eurogroup.
So they're
astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah. So they're represented in the Eurogroup.
Well, let me give you an example. When the ultimatum was presented to me on the 25th of June, on a take it or leave it basis, and what that meant was that if I said no, I'm leaving it, our banks would have been closed as they were 5 days later.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a pretty powerful ultimatum. It's like making me an offer that I can't refuse, even though we refused it. For a while. Until we caved in and then I resigned. But this is interesting. I was presented with this ultimatum. It comprised 3 chapters. One was the fiscal policy that we would have to follow for the next 20 years. Interesting. It's interesting given that our mandate from the Greek people was only for 4 years.
This is spelled out
in black and white. Yeah. What the primary surplus could be, what the tax take should be, what measures we should use, what the VAT rate should be in order to get that primary surplus. Chapter 1. Chapter 2.
This is specifically for Greece.
Only for Greece.
Yeah. Has there been something similar for Spain or Italy?
Yeah. Portugal. Yeah. This colonization is at full blast. Not just, it started with Greece. All bad things started with Greece. And then they spread out. Greece is the laboratory of misanthropy.
How do they deal with France?
But France, of course, is a final destination.
Yeah.
And the beauty...
Is that beginning to give orders to France?
Of course.
That is.
Of course.
From the Eurogroup.
No, the beauty of those 5-6 months in power. Not what power. In office.
Watching power.
In office. The beauty of it was, we academics, all our lives, we theorize about things. Okay, we try to get evidence, but we theorize. During those 5 months, I didn't have to theorize. And to answer your question about France, at some point I was having a very interesting conversation. I had many interesting conversations with the finance minister of Germany, Dr. Wolfgang Schäuble. At some point, when I showed him this ultimatum, and I said to him, it's a long story, but I'll cut it short. I said to him, would you sign this? Just let's take off our hats as finance ministers for a moment. I've been in politics for 5 months. You've been in politics for 40 years. You keep barking in my ear that I should sign it. Stop telling me what to do. As human beings, you know that my people now are suffering a Great Depression. We have children at school that faint as a result of malnutrition. Can you just do me the favor and advise me on what to do? Don't tell me what to do. As somebody with 40 years, a Europeanist, somebody who comes from a democratic country, just Wolfgang to Yanis, not finance minister to finance minister. And to his credit, he looked out of the window for a while. And he turned to me and he said, well, the question that I'd actually asked him was, would you sign this? And he turned around and he said, as a patriot, I wouldn't. Of course, the next question was, so why are you forcing me to do it? He said, don't you understand? I did this in the Baltics, in Portugal, in Ireland. We have discipline to look after, and I want to take the Troika to Paris.
He said.
Yes. So I don't need to theorize. It starts with Greece. Greece is a pipsqueak country. It's not that important. But you start with that small problem. You impose these unsustainable loans, which give creditors huge power, and then you start cutting, because the final intention, and I try to explain this in this book, is to curtail the Parisian elite's long-standing ambition to usurp the power of the Deutschmark for the purposes of expanding the French nation-state's reach and control of Europe.
Also, I presume, for the Bundesbank to be able to control the French budget.
Absolutely, not so much the Bundesbank, but the Federal Finance Minister, Schäuble himself. And